When you're transitioning off of arguably the most intense arc that this anime has seen to date, how do you bring up the next one? How do you let these characters transition from life or death to student mode? And I have to say, I thought this episode, they did a great job at that. I mean, you can just look at the opening in itself. Like, look at the first minute of the episode. We get a little bit of a reminder of what happened in the previous episode with Overhaul. And usually those little reminders, those little flashbacks that kind of just recap everything that we've already seen. Usually I'm pretty indifferent to them, but I was like, you know what, after Overhaul's insane defeat there, yeah, show me it. Show me as much as you want. It's such a great moment. I'm fine seeing it again. And then they kick off My Hero Academia slice of life opening, and I'm just like, ugh, okay, definitely was not expecting that, but strangely, it kinda works in its favor, as if, hey, you've seen some crazy things, you've seen some depressing things, let's tone you back down in the best way possible. And I'm not really sure what people are gonna feel about that opening, but I thought it was catchy, I thought it was very different, and hey, if you're gonna show me a different arc too, why not? Give me a different opening that doesn't feel super intense, but my slice of academia. Absolutely, go ahead with it. I thought it was a very interesting way to kind of decompress the viewer, because even though the arc was over, it still felt like we were anxious, or at least I know I was. So to have like the most intense thing in recent memory, to then transition it to such a slice of life opening, I thought was like the perfect way to remind us that these kids are supposed to be students. Yeah, they got incorporated into some pretty crazy shit this past arc, but they're supposed to be students, and I thought they did a great job with a simple opening to really decompress the viewer, at least that's how I felt. And watching this episode play out, it was quite interesting because, like with the opening kind of reminding you that these are students, I mean, the episode in itself does as well. These are kids by all rights of the definition. They are not emotionally mature like most of the adult heroes in this world. And even though they're very skilled, and even though we have characters like Tota, Deku, things like that, who are a big reason why the world didn't fall apart, they still aren't emotionally mature the same way these adults are. And it's easy to forget because of how badass they can be and how they get incorporated in so many supervillain shenanigans. At the same time, though, there's a reason why a character like Deku, even though his body is mentally and emotionally exhausted, he can't fall asleep and he just thinks of everything that just happened over the past few days. There's a reason that happens, more so than it would for a hero like someone like All Might. Even though he would still think about failures and think about success, he's not going to stay awake the same way someone like Deku would, because that is something that's hard to deal with, because he's not emotionally and mentally mature enough to deal with everything that he's seen, and it's why a lot of these teachers try to push them away. I mean, you can look at Eraserhead, who tried, if you come into contact with the League of Villains again, you are not allowed to participate anymore. It was just because of the situation that it was kind of stupid to try to say, okay, I'm going to reel you back in, because you kind of need everyone that was there. So I like how this episode, it really flexed that these are students. They remind you with their cheesiness, their corniness, their humor, but also how broken most of these characters were, especially those who were in the front lines, feeling like, did I do anything wrong? People blaming for Night Eye's death, people blaming for the destruction and the annihilation. This episode did a great job at reminding you just how young these kids actually are. Even though we see them in badass moments, they still are kids. And the theme of continuing to smile even at the face of so much despair, I thought was the perfect way to kind of go forward in the future of My Hero Academia. I mean, when we see Toda for the first time in this episode, the dude is just, he's working his muscles. He has all this energy, he just lost his mentor, one of his probably arguably best friends, but he's not crying. He's smiling for the future because he realizes that's what needs to be done. He believes in that prediction that Night Eye gave him, that he'll be a hero someday. Yeah, he lost his ability, but you know what? If Eri in the future masters her ability, I'll ask her to rewind. And I mean, hey, my boy also said that I was going to still be a hero. And I like that spirit and determination, that even though he may have had quite a few steps backwards, he's still going to take one giant-ass step forward to make sure his dream's a reality. And in doing so, it cheers up Deku, who isn't really ready for things like this, and how both of them kind of comfort one another. I think that's a great theme and message overall, that you need to keep smiling for the future, even at the face of so much despair, which is basically what All Might's always represented. And that moment where Deku offers his ability to Toda, I thought was so amazing. I mean, especially because All Might was listening behind the door. Obviously, Toda didn't believe like he could actually give him his power. Of course, we know, give him a couple of hair strands, he absolutely could. But I thought it was quite interesting to see that he was just like, why would I want your power? There was no hesitation. Why would I want it? It would be an inconvenience to you, and I'm gonna still be a hero. there's not a single doubt in his mind that he's not going to still be a hero, even with or without powers. And that says a hell of a lot about the determination and the mentality of his character and how it is so strong. And I really do appreciate how when they brought up Eri, they once again said, like, maybe in the future she could help me, but there's never a guarantee. What they did with Eri's ability was almost like an endgame sort of thing. Like, even if it wasn't endgame, it'd be arcs down the line where there's even a chance that you could reverse what has happened to Togata, and maybe it would be at the very end of the anime or the end of the manga, things like that. I like how instead of just giving this like super like convenient ability that can rewind anything, similar to Night Eye. Like had Night Eye survived and Eri been able to use like her ability, there would have been no threat. You could predict everything and you could rewind everything. There'd be nothing there. So basically taking out one to show us emotional maturity and also making it so the author can write things and not have to keep proving why this ability can't work in perfect ways, even though it is foresight, but also limiting this little girl's ability to being not emotionally mature enough to control her ability. Also, her body kind of goes out of control, and there's only a very slight chance that she can rewind crucial things like losing your ability or stopping All Might from dying, things like that. I like how they really cover their tracks while also really putting the focus on these two boys just smiling and realizing that they have to be so brave, not only for themselves, but the others around them. And I like just seeing that play out, and I like just getting that almost like calm before a storm. Even though the storm just passed, it kind of felt like even though it may have passed for now, these villains are still out there. They're still running wild. We get Grentrino in this episode, and I'm just like, what are we even looking at? That thing is ginormous, and I love how he had to basically... Yeah, I mean, they got one character who basically is a key asset in the League of Villains because of the portals and things like that, but you still have this, like, monster rampaging. It's like, okay, where are you going with that? I'll be interested to see what they do with that. I mean, of course, you get, like, the All Might and Endeavor confrontation. Like, the only thing I really know about this arc is I know the general idea of it, but I don't know any of the key details. And I know this arc in the manga, when it initially came out, kind of riled some feathers. I believe the manga got death threats because of it, which is absolutely insane. Like, you take your manga way too seriously if you're going to do something like that. I know the general idea, and it sounds very cool to me, so I expect I'm going to really enjoy this arc, even though it's supposed to be very different from anything we've really seen up to this point. And I'm excited for that. I mean, it looks like next week we're probably going to get some makeup exams going on here, or at least makeup training for the exams. And that should be pretty fun in itself. But I have to say, this was a very fulfilling episode. I really didn't have too many expectations going into this episode because we really did just conclude the arc. There's no way that you can give me stakes and just moments that are going to compete with anything Overhaul has brought to the table, or even Shigaraki. But what they did was they remind us how new really are to this world of heroes, in that they aren't supposed to be in situations like this as of yet, and it's going to take an emotional strain on them. And even if you have characters like Ida who realizes like, hey, we got to give him space, if there's any sign of maturity, he's going to start acting like a kid himself and start shaking him down, being like, I was so worried, right? I love how they really incorporated such maturity, but also such innocence, such childness into this episode to make us feel like we really don't want to see these characters in situations like the previous arc, because they actually aren't ready, and every time they get thrown into a situation that they're not ready for, there's a chance that they could die. I mean, just look at Deku. Every time, like, a new season starts up, there's a new scar on his body. He's wounded and broken his body to the point that literally, from head to toe, he is covered in scars that can't be healed. Like, that shouldn't happen until he's All Might's age, right? But he's such a young kid, but keeps getting thrown into these situations, and I really don't know where they truly want to go with the aftermath and how they're going to transition into this new arc, but I'm quite excited to see where they're going to take it. Like, I think this episode's purpose was to both decompress the viewer, but also remind us that even if characters get out of alive, they still have mental scars. And the fact that we're giving characters mental scars, and they are in a school setting, they are school superheroes, nothing could ever go wrong. It once again proves that My Hero Academia is more than just some battle shonen of the season. I don't think it really needs to prove it at this point in time, but of course there's still going to be those people who just hate watch a show and be like, nah, it's still just some schoolyard shenanigans. No, there clearly is some emotional maturity to the writing, and I'm really excited to see where they're going to take it, both when they shift the perspectives around and just what other characters are going to pop in the final half of this anime adaptation. And I thought this was a great episode. I thought it was a different feeling episode for sure. That's perfectly fine. I mean, don't keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for something to change. Do something different, take some risk, and I thought this was a great episode for what it was trying to be, and it definitely moved me on an emotional level for not having characters die or anything like that, but just seeing the mental and emotional scars going through these characters and just moments overall. I'm sure there's going to be some talk about the amount of flashback in this episode. It wasn't definitely dominating, but there was enough moments from just episodes prior that we did get to experience. But I actually thought it worked in its favor because you do have characters like Deku who are literally staying up at night thinking about what's happened, and you see so many characters with such a dull moment with just basically their reactions, just looking at the ground or feeling worried or just very anxious. So it actually worked in its favor to make us feel like we were these characters, these students just uncertain of where the future will go after experiencing things that you shouldn't have to see until years later. So I actually thought the flashbacks worked in its favor. I'm sure not everyone will feel that way, but I actually thought it was done on purpose to make it feel like the viewer watching was the same as these students, understanding that a lot of shit just happened, and even though it could be anxious for us, it was a million times worse for them because they actually had to risk their life and had to see people that they cared for either incredibly wounded, if not killed, such as Night Eye. And I thought they did a great job at incorporating flashback without it feeling like it was just there to take up a time space there. Rather, it was actually important for the plot at hand and really showing how broken these characters truly are. I thought this was great, but let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be for manga readers, anime originals like myself, what do you think? Where do you think it's going to go next week? Let me know. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.